Hello everyone, Genki here. Tomorrow marks my 3rd anniversary on YouTube, and I decided to make a couple changes. I'm going to make a community post explaining everything if y'all are interested. The most important being that I'm going to start making more variety content, starting today, where I'm going to see if I can beat Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom with only Archery. This will be my first full playthrough. Previously I had done like a third of the main story, so I'm going into this mostly blind. The rules are pretty simple. I can only do damage to enemies using a bow and arrow. Note I say enemies. I'll go more into that later. I must defeat all the temples. This is a quote-unquote first playthrough after all. The challenge ends after Demon King Ganondorf. If you played the game, you know why. Also, no glitches or exploits. I don't know any glitches to begin with, but I felt I needed to add that. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Let's begin. We can't get a bow right off the bat, so we made our way to the Temple of Time to talk to Hyrule. He will gesture us towards the shrines. The Ultra Hand Shrine was pretty easy with no way to attack. I was thinking the Fuse Shrine would have our first bow, but we actually found an old wooden bow on the way there. At the Fuse Shrine, we got our first roadblock. A rock wall. I'm allowing melee weapons to get rid of obstacles. I am not going to waste my very few item resources like bombs on a wall. Once past the wall, we got ourselves a second wooden bow. But also we encounter a Captain Construct, who drops our second type of bow, a Construct bow. We can now make our way to the Great Sky Island pretty smoothly. We did have some trouble with the like, which involved me wasting my only bombs. We had to just run past it. From there we made our way to the Sin Shrine, back to the Temple of Time, and then to the final Recall Shrine. With 4 light blessings, I can give Link 4 hearts, which allowed us to give our Master Sword to Zelda, and make our way down to Hyrule. Our first destination was Lookout Landing, our main hub for the challenge. We talked to Pura, who gave us the map points for the 4 cities that we need to help. I decided on Rito Village first, because I thought that would give me a good source of bows. Along the way, I did every shrine I could and even saved Hestu. We couldn't really find any good bows, just more construct bows. We did find ourselves a strong construct bow though, but I decided to save that for later. As we made our way up to Rito Village, we discovered that it's rather chilly compared to our last visit in Breath of the Wild. We make our way over and meet our old friend Teba, who explained that an endless blizzard is covering the area, and the source seems to be a giant vortex in the sky. We were told to go find Tulin, Teba's son. Along the way, finding a Boko camp where we picked up a swallow bow. It's more power than the construct bow, and its range is a lot longer. I knew where to find Tulin from my previous playthrough, but I think I missed him, because as I took out this Aracuda, a cutscene activated. The monster had Tulin's bow. It also activated a battle with 3 Bokoblins and 3 Aracudas. We got taken out on our first attempt, but that is because we only had a heart and a half. On our next attempt, by taking out the archer and taking his falcon bow, we were able to avoid any massive damage and take out the Bokos. Following that battle, we were visited by Hearth, who gave Tulin and Link permission to investigate the vortex. This required going up. We had to use Ascend up these ancient looking buildings and then paraglide to different structures. At the top of the mountain were structures we had to fly to, eventually reaching a longer structure where we ascended all the way to the top. The structure brought us all the way to the sky map. Thankfully we were close to a shrine, so we could teleport here if we needed more ammunition. To traverse the sky, we had to use these boats with trampoline sails, combined sometimes with Tulin's power over wind. The way up to the vortex was covered in constructs, including captains, who dropped more bows for us. We did reach this one area where there was way too many enemies. I decided to buy the Hylian armor for more protection, but in the end, I decided to just make a run for it, just to find the bridge collapsing below Link's feet. This took a few tries. Past that point, we found another shrine before reaching the vortex. Our altitude was now so high that we had to use cold resistant food. Ignore the sword with the fire fruit. To enter the vortex, we had to tank leak up, jumping across multiple of the trampoline ships because at the top was the Eye of the Storm, where there was no wind pressure. Inside was a flying ship. According to Tulin, this ship was supposedly from a children's story. The source of the blizzard seemed to be coming from inside the hull of the ship. To open it, we had to activate 5 turbines using Tulin's power. Most of the turbines were easy, but I did have issues getting this one door to open. Like, how am I supposed to do this? There was a soldier construct guarding the door, so I assumed the stick I was holding was the key, but it refused to work. Somehow, I eventually got the door to open. Don't ask me how. Oh, and I finally got a fire rod, so I don't need cold resistance food. With all the turbines on, it's time for the boss, Kogera. Kogera is a gimmick boss. Attacking its belly with a fire arrow or bomb arrow opens up a core that can be taken out with a single arrow. Do this 5 more times and that's one boss down. Kogera's defeat unlocks a secret stone, making Tulin the new Sage of Wind. This gave Link a Tulin clone that will fight by his side. For the spirit of the challenge, I decided I would only use Tulin's Vow for most of the run. Next up is Zora's Domain, because Zora's Domain has a lot of Zalfos, and their bows are pretty good. We did come across our first encounter with Gloomhands, and despite their bizarre speed, we managed to outrun them. Those things will always be nightmare fuel. On the way to Zora's Domain, we reached the Willen Stable, where we could start the side quest to unlock the Great Fairies. However, we had to go back to Rito Village and start the News Reporter quest. This unlocks Launchpad McQuack, who then unlocks the Great Fairy quest. Using a horse we caught just for this quest and this quest alone, we had to tow the stable trotters to the Great Fairy. We can now upgrade our armor, however not yet. We needed more bokoblin horns. Oh, also I discovered the Willen Stables was in the wrong direction. Thankfully we were close to the mountain leading up to Zora's Domain. This area was covered in sludge. To clean up the path, we had to fuse splash fruit or choo-choo jellies with our arrows. The Zalfos which covered the area are quite stronger than bokoblins. They have a ranged attack even without a bow, and they can throw things, but we have a Tulin. We followed the mountain trail for the most part, however, then we encountered Black Zalfos, and almost ran headfirst into a like. We also had a lot of trouble with the Zalfos camp, where we were forced to serpentine our way around them and progress further up the mountain. There was sludge blocking the Zalfos path thankfully. At that point, I just decided to climb the mountain. We did encounter a huge bridge, which had a freaking boss bokoblin at the end. I could have sworn there was a moblin that spawned here. The boss bokoblin came with 3 regular bokos, but we managed to run past them and climb away from them. From there we continued forward, and find ourselves a rock that we could recoil back to the sky. This allowed us to skip the rest of the mountain and make our way to Zora's Domain. At Zora's Domain, we find Yona, Sidon's fiance, who tells us where to find him. Sidon then led us on a fetch quest, where we had to visit Giotto and fix a stone tablet. The tablet said that we needed the scales of the Zora King. However, first we had to get a fish for Yona, so that she could get our Zora armor repaired. This allowed us to investigate the waterfalls, where we found an open area containing a sick King Dorphin. King Dorphin then gave us his scales. From there, we swam up to a sky island, and shot the king's scale through a bunch of rubble that made the shape of a tear. This caused the light to start shining out of the reservoir. However, before we can investigate that, it's time for a boss battle, and it's against a freaking like. I know how to get rid of the sludge, but it wouldn't reveal its core. Also, its sludge attack does 3 hearts in damage. To prep for the like, I went to the depths to farm bomb flowers, and explored Hyrule Castle to get the soldier set. The soldier set has a higher defense than our unupgraded Hylian set. However, during the battle with the sludge lake, I found that it only revealed its core when Link was in close range. That meant the bomb flowers we spent time farming were now useless. Also, the like moves locations after every 3 to 4 arrows. But it only took 1 arrow to stun it, and that caused Sidon to walk up and attack it, helping us easily take it out. We can now go to the reservoir with Sidon, where we had to go underwater and use the Ultra Hand to make a bridge, leading to a light that unlocked a waterfall, connecting to the sky. For some reason, we were so high up that we were in low gravity. It was a pretty fun mechanic. Also, it made it really easy to use bullet time. We couldn't use the low gravity to progress the entire way to the temple. We had to also use these floating bubbles, along with groups of waterfalls and Zonite devices. Before the temple was a stronger type of Captain Construct, who does over 6 hearts in damage with 1 hit. It forced us to fight at a further range, and rely on Sidon tooling. However, once it went down, we got a new bow, a Mighty Construct bow. Our first bow with over 20 damage. In the temple, we found a large source of sludge clogging the water that drains down into Zora's domain. Our job was to turn on 4 faucets in order to clean up the sludge. The puzzles for the water temple were harder than the wind temple. There was one where I had to get an orb up to another platform. However, we first had to deal with 3 strong soldier constructs. Thankfully they were weak to water and gravity. The puzzle itself took me a while, before I realized there was sludge covering one of those bubble making devices, which I used to move the orb. We then used recall in order to hold up a switch, which drained the water and revealed one of the faucets. The other faucets after that though were pretty easy. So it's on to the boss, the Muk Torok. The Muk Torok runs around the arena as a shark made out of sludge. It only took 2 splash fruits to dispel the sludge, but we were doing very little damage. Our bomb flowers did more damage, but we only had a limited amount. I left and came back to the battle after grinding up 100 arrows. Through experimentation, I discovered Sidon's water power does not do any damage to the Muk Torok, but it does get rid of the sludge in 1 hit. So I used that in order to save on arrows. On our winning attempt, I missed the water attack 3 times. However, the Muk Torok's attacks were all easy to dodge thanks to the area's low gravity. When we eventually hit it, we first spammed all of our bomb flowers. We only had 5, but that was a lot of damage. From there, we used bullet time to spam as many arrows as we could before the Muk Torok could recover. After 2 rounds of arrows, we got the Muk Torok to phase 2. For phase 2, the Muk Torok covers the room in sludge, making it harder to move. However, we still had access to our splash fruit. Also, I prepared attack up food. It was only attack up 2, but that was enough. The Muk Torok could sometimes flop around like a crazy fish, but a single arrow could stun it in place. We were about to take out the Muk Torok with 2 more barrages of arrows, but then our bow broke, causing us to need to take out the Muk Torok with a 5th barrage of arrows. We ended the battle with 19 arrows to spare. That's 2 stages down. And as I said earlier, unless I need to, I will not be using Sidon's Vow. I decided next to take a side trip to Dueling Peaks, where we helped the Stable Trotters unlock our next Great Fairy. We couldn't upgrade our soldier armor, because it required Boko Guts, which was a rare drop. However, we could upgrade all of our Hylian armor, making it have better defense than our soldier set. I'm just going to point out now that the Hylian set's going to be our armor for the rest of the run. For our next stage, I decided it was time to head up Death Mountain towards Goron City. The route up to the village had very little enemies, and also weirdly, we did not need any flame resistance to enter the city. In the city itself, we discovered that the inhabitants were being brainwashed by Rock Roast, and that Yunobo had turned into a luchador. He also turned into an ass. We were tasked with talking to Yunobo. We had to take a cart over to Yunoboko headquarters. I thought it would have been good to check the surrounding area, but then we found another set of Gloom Hands. That's too close to a story-related area. At Yunoboko headquarters, we were told that Yunobo was in the storage area. For the storage area, we had to get the Flamebreaker armor. Inside, we found not only Yunobo, but also Princess Zelda. We got closer, but this warranted a battle with Yunobo. The battle was just an easy puzzle fight. We needed to dodge Yunobo and let him hit the wall. From there, one hit with our bow could crack Yunobo's mask. We had to do this 3 total times before Yunobo's mask could break. The mask had been controlling Yunobo and causing a shift in his personality. Yunobo's power allowed him to destroy large breakable objects by charging into him. He could also attach himself to minecarts and zonite gliders. Using this, we were able to make our way to the top of Death Mountain. Death Mountain was a dormant volcano, so the top was just a crater. However, we then had another encounter with Zelda, leading to our next mini-boss, Moragia. For Moragia, we had to fly a conveniently placed glider, and I found out that I suck at flying these things. Skill issues aside, Moragia went down after one hit to each head. This revealed the inside of Death Mountain, which had turned into a chasm, leading into the depths. Inside, we found a cart, which allowed us to traverse some of the path easily, but then it got stuck. Also, I found myself overwhelmed by all the gloom enemies, to the point where I decided again to make a run for it. Yunobo had gotten himself caught up in the action, so it was just me and Tulip. Thankfully, Link could climb the marbled rocks. Those rocks blocked the entrance to the Fire Temple. Inside the temple, we again find Zelda, but then suddenly a bunch of rocks came together and fused to the ceiling. To reach the inner chamber where Zelda was, Yunobo and Link had to unlock 5 locks. A couple of the locks were easy peasy, but traversing these mine tracks confused the living daylights out of me. There were 2 locks that I found really difficult. One of them was this one where we had to get on a minecart, and it led us to a track that went continuously around the area. We had to get Yunobo to hit a marbled rock, but I first decided to jump off the track, before using Yunobo to break the rock, revealing a water fountain. We then had to use the hardened lava from the fountain to make a track, leading Yunobo up to the gong to release the lock. The other difficult lock was on the other side of the area we were just at. We again needed to use the hardened lava to make a ramp, for Yunobo to break some rocks. We then had to make a long bridge for Link to make his way across. This took a few tries to get the length right. With all 5 locks unlatched, it's time for our next boss, Marble Goma. This was a weird boss. We had to use Yunobo to break 2 of Goma's legs. This would cause Goma to crash down, and we could attack its only weak spot, its eye. I'm not sure why, but no matter our distance, Yunobo would never attack Goma. We had to do all of the damage on our own. We had to make a trip to Farron Woods. We picked up a night spell from a Hinox, but what we were really after were Mighty Bananas. Mighty Bananas gave us Attack Up 3 food. The Attack Up food caused our arrows to do a lot more damage. However, we could only get in 4 arrows before Goma regrew its limbs. Goma was throwing bombs as we were running around it, but they were not that much of an issue. Also, thankfully, even if Yunobo refused to attack Goma, at least Tulin got some hits in, even if that was the only time Tulin attacked. 22 arrows finished off Phase 1 Goma. For Phase 2, Goma now traversed via the ceiling, and would surround Link in bombs. We had to use Yunobo both to break free from the bombs and knock Goma off the ceiling. It was a little annoying, since it was hard to aim Yunobo, however, the bombs never hit us, as we took out Goma using only 47 arrows. Only the Gerudo are left. But first, I again helped the Stable Trotters, but I didn't upgrade any armor to Tier 3, because I didn't want to farm Black Bokos. The path to Gerudo Desert was unusually hot, to the point where we had to take a quiz. However, most of the canyon was shaded, so we didn't need any heat resistance. I was following the path as normal, but that brought us closer to the Skyview Tower. I decided to open it up, because the elevation from the tower allowed Link to fly straight to Karakara Bazaar. From Karakara Bazaar, the path to Gerudo Town was covered in dust devils and large rocks. This allowed Link to fly to Gerudo Town, avoiding most enemies. I had already done Gerudo Town in my previous game, so I knew how to reach the people who were hiding in the bunker. This gave us directions toward Riju. Riju's power is that she can strike down bolts of lightning if we shoot at an area or enemy with our bow. Well, yes, it used our bow. The damage is from Riju and not Link. I was not sure how to treat this. However, we didn't have time for that, because Karkar Bazaar was under attack. Riju's power was active by default, so I used it to take out the Gibdos. This caused Gibdo nests to spawn around Gerudo Town. We were forced to play like a mini tower defense game and place soldiers around different entrances. But it didn't matter much, as Link still had to go to each entrance to take care of the Gibdo nest. To reach the Lightning Temple, Link needed to take these towers with mirrors and have them for a triangle. That would in turn unlock an altar that required Riju's power to activate. The Lightning Temple, it seemed, had been infested by Gibdos. By striking the middle nest, we woke the boss, Queen Gibdo. Queen Gibdo was just like any other Gibdo, in that she needed to be hit with a fire or lightning attack to become weakened. Despite her size, it only needed one hit. However, we were doing almost no damage. Also, the dust devils it could spawn were a pain in the butt. Bombs were doing more damage, but since this battle was a mini-boss version, I decided to use Riju's power to beat Queen Gibdo and save our bombs for the real battle. Oh, and by the way, shock fruit are not enough to break the Gibdo nest. That will be something that requires Riju. The interior of the Lightning Temple was about as confusing as the Fire Temple. We needed to power up 4 generators, which would in turn power up a lift. The temple included a lot of puzzles that required Link to press a switch to deactivate in order for Riju to follow Link. There were also a couple areas we had to paraglide to, leaving only Link and Tulin, but we solved everything relatively easily. Until I had a stupid moment and couldn't figure out how to get to the last generator. It was then I discovered the bricks that could be moved using Ultra Hands. Time for the boss. Queen Gibdo again started the battle in a nest. Before the battle, I made sure to prepare Attack of 3 food. This allowed us to do more damage than before, and we actually got to phase 2 on our first try. This activated the Gibdo nest around the arena. I had to use Riju's power to get rid of them, and this revealed beams of light shooting down on the arena. These beams of light kept the Gibdos on the ground at bay. However, Queen Gibdo has a range attack, which took out Link. After a few attempts, I decided to start using bombs, because I realized 3 bombs stuns Queen Gibdo. This causes Riju to come in and start attacking on her own. This helped us more easily get through phase 1. For phase 2, I prepared Defense of 3 food. This made the regular Gibdo's attacks no more than a scratch, as I had Link and Riju take out the 4 Gibdo nests. Queen Gibdo during this stays in the air, so we could just leave her be until we finished up all the Gibdos on the ground. When it was just Queen Gibdo by herself again, I had Link spam fire arrows, but it took over a minute before I realized I needed to replace our defense buff with another attack buff. This helped quite a bit, but as I couldn't stagger Queen Gibdo anymore, it was back to just Link soloing her. Also, Queen Gibdo's Dust Devil attack became more frequent, but they only did 2 hearts per hit, so we were able to easily tank the hits. Queen Gibdo went down with us having 13 arrows remaining. We started the battle with 101 arrows, but with the mobs and the Dust Devils eating some of our arrows, who knows how many it actually took to take out the boss itself. That's all 4 temples done, so we returned to Lookout Landing to report to Pura, when suddenly Pura spotted Zelda on the flank portion of Hyrule Castle. We made our way to the castle. It required a stamina food though, since I had yet to upgrade Link's stamina. At the castle, Zelda put a marker on our map. Now, we could immediately go to the marked spot, but first we need to collect some things. In the throne room and in Zelda's study, there were 2 Royal Guard bows, which have a power of 50. We also made sure to get the shrine so that we could teleport to and from here. We then went to the location Zelda marked to find what I was kind of expecting, an ambush. The Royal Guard bow carried the battle. Like Look at that damage with no attack buff. We did break the bow, but a mighty construct bow with the help of Tulin won us the battle. This was basically how the dungeon worked. We ran around to different locations chasing Zelda and getting into more battles with different monsters. The only issues we had were with this Hinox in the library and the Silver Moblin. Other than that, everything went fine until Zelda finally led us into the throne room. This was the moment where it had been finally revealed that the Zelda we had been chasing was an illusion created by Ganondorf. And now we had to face Phantom Ganon. Scratch that. 5 Phantom Ganons. Each individual Phantom Ganon's health was pretty small, but it didn't affect the larger health bar that much. The best strat I could think of was to focus on one Ganon at a time, and let Tulin do his best to distract the others. This was pretty hard, when 2 to 3 Ganons decided to gank up on Link, but we had a lot of food, and managed to persevere, taking out all 5 Ganons. Just for phase 2 to be 5 more Ganons, with a central one spreading gloom across the arena. Thankfully, taking out one of the Ganons resets the gloom. The Ganons now had more weapons like crushers and halberds, but we managed to take him out. Following the battle, Ganondorf made a reappearance and tried to take out Link, but we were saved by the real Tulin and the rest of the sages. Back at Lookout Landing, we talked to Pura, who pointed out that there was still a sage missing. To find the sage, we had to go to the Ring Ruins in Kakariko Village. But it was then I discovered I didn't have the camera feature on the Pura pad. So I had to go back to Lookout Landing, talk to Robbie to start his quest to get the camera. Then I had to go back to Kakariko, get a picture of a tablet, show it to a researcher, who then told us to go to Farron Woods. At Farron Woods, we found a chest with an armor piece. We needed to find a full set, but in order to do it the way the game wanted, we needed to have the Pura pad to have the feature that could search for items. That feature is locked behind Robbie, who will not leave Lookout Landing until we beat Master Koga. I decided to go online, find a guide, get the armor, and drop the Zone charge on the altar like the game was telling us to. This revealed a group of islands in the sky. The group of islands was filled with enemies, but we didn't have a way to teleport until halfway through the islands. So we had to fight with what we had or just make a run for it. At the end of the islands was a building with another door that required us to have a certain amount of hearts, like the one at the beginning. Behind the door was a mask. When activated, the mask shot a laser towards the ground. The spirit of the final sage seemed to be inside the mask. We had to then attach the mask to a glider and fly our way down. At the bottom, we found an elevator that led us to the depths. Inside the depths was oddly a construct factory. The sage wanted us to create a body that it could use to help us. We had to collect the limbs.
I would ask you to visit.
Each section that had a body part contained some type of puzzle we had to solve. However, the puzzle rooms themselves had no enemies, so other than not understanding some of the puzzles, we easily collected all the body parts. With the sage not having a body, we could not make our way to the Spirit Temple. The game wanted me to ride the construct as though it was like a mech, but I felt that would be against the challenge, so I just let it walk around on its own. The route to the temple was covered in gloom enemies, including even a gloom Hinox. However, after running around this platform, the Hinox got tired of playing and walked away. Next up we had an area covered in rocks, and since I didn't want to use Yunobo, I ended up using the construct to destroy the rocks. At the Spirit Temple, we found no puzzle, just a single elevator down. At the bottom was a square arena, and then Secret Stone. However, the floor was covered in gloom. We had to ride the construct across the gloom. As we got a good distance in, the boss activated. It was another construct like ours, but it was being controlled by gloom.
That construct.
I tried to get off the construct to fight, but it was not happening. The gloom was constantly taking our hearts, and our arrows were doing nothing. This battle was a gimmick fight. Using our construct, we had to smack the C's construct using items around the arena, and after a certain number of hits, it would fly back into the electric fence that surrounded the arena. Now, the Siege construct could do that to us as well, so we had to take advantage of our shield. The difference being that all the attacks from the Siege construct did damage to us, while only the electric fence did damage to the construct. It took 6 hits into the electric fence to end phase 1. Ignore the attack up boost. It had no effect, since only the fence did damage. For phase 2, the Siege construct now had 4 arms and could fly, but his flying skills were only slightly better than mine. Eventually I discovered that when the construct was in midair, we could stand under it and it wouldn't know what to do. They would try to move around, but we could easily get back under it before it started attacking. Once its fans despawned or it decided to dive, we could then spec into the fence. 6 more hits, making a total of 12, took out the Siege construct. With this, we were introduced to Sage's spirit, Mineru, who was a Zonai. I didn't do the tiers on this run, but if I remember correctly, Mineru was King Raru's sister.
I'm glad to meet you. Link.
Also, this marked the answer to our challenge. No,
Yes, thank you.
you cannot beat Tears of the Kingdom with only
I
archery,
have recovered my
but we did not
senses.
come this far for the run to end here.
Originally,
I decided to progress the story like normal, meaning it's time to get the Master Sword, which we could not use. It was at this point I decided I need the power of all the sages. To get the Master Sword's location, we had to consult the Deku Tree, but for some reason, to access the Deku Tree, we had to go into the depths, and then once we were under Korok Forest, we could make our way up. However, the Deku Tree would not speak to us. He was being attacked from the inside, and something told me it was not Queen Goma from Ocarina of Time. We entered inside the Deku Tree to find a chasm, leading to what I was fearing. Gloom hands. This was rough. The hands were too fast. It caught up to Link no matter how much we ran. However, the solution was so simple it was quite funny. Attack of food plus bombs. The flames that lingered after the explosion stunned the hands. It did take 10 bombs, but we beat the hands and made it to Phantom Ganon. Since it was just one, I decided to go back to just using Tulip. Unlike the hands, this thing was no threat. With the Deku Tree cured, he explained that he could sense the location of the Master Sword, and that it was moving. I kinda already knew the location. The Master Sword was inside Dragon Zelda. I managed to catch the dragon flying around Death Mountain, but then I discovered it required stamina to pull the sword. I did some shrines in order to get Link's stamina to over 1.5 wheels, but it was actually not enough. I then decided to take a trip to Lookout Landing, to talk to the Devil Statue. He has the ability to exchange hearts for stamina vessels, and vice versa. I gave Link 2 full stamina wheels, and that was actually just enough to pull the sword out. With our now useless sword in hand, it's off to fight Ganon. I once again activated all the sages, and if you're wondering why, our path was blocked by a Gloom Lionel. This was harder than most of the bosses. The sages were not really distracting it at all. We did have a funny moment where the sages pinned the Lionel against the pillar, but that was not the winning attempt. We had to use our good old strategy of attack of food and bombs to beat the Lionel. When the Lionel was in close range, we switched to our shield, until we could gain some distance again. We had to be careful, because the Lionel did 5 hearts in damage with each attack. We were down 2 shields, and we only had 1 heart remaining when we finally took out the Lionel. That was close, but hey, we now had a Savage Lionel bow. To restore our hearts, we had to go to the light route at the beginning of the chasm, before we could progress further. I was a little lost, but then I read that there was a ledge to the left that Link could ascend upwards. We then had to go down a hole, recall a bridge piece up, and enter a room that we couldn't reach from the Lionel room. To progress further, we had to take out a bunch of ice keys and ice light legs. But the issue came afterwards. We had to drop down a long room with the spiraling stairs. At the bottom, we received a message that our sage powers were now disabled. And to make matters worse, there was a black and silver Lizalfos. The silver ones seemed to just stand in one place and shoot arrows, so we were able to take the black Lizalfos up the stairs and take it out. With long range and the stairs for cover, the silver Lizalfos soon went down as well. To progress further from this room, we had to make a plan using Zonite parts, because if we fall into the next room, we'll have to deal with another Gloom Hands. I would rather not. On the other side of the room, there was a silver moblin. He had a bow, but I thought it was best to just leave him be. From there, all we had to deal with was a silver bokoblin, which we took out with our Lana bow, and a room of Gibdos, which went down to a barrage of Chuchu Delis. Past the Gibdos, we reached the point of no return. There was no saving or teleporting past this point. First up was the Demon King's army, but we did not have to do it alone. As the battle was about to start, all the sages appeared to assist in the battle. This helped a lot. With our attack of food, the red Bokos were all one-shots. The blue ones took more hits, but the issues were the black Bokos. When we were being pursued by one of them, we had to constantly just run and shoot, run and shoot. For the boss Bokoblin, he was actually easy to keep at a distance. His moveset with a sword was pretty sloppy. Next are the Lizalfos, and we have an issue. Link only has 4 hearts left. I did some research and discovered to recover our hearts, we needed to make Sunny food. We had to use one right before our battle with the Lizalfos. I kept Link at a distance when I could, but this part of the battle was carried by the sages. However, then came out the Gibdos. The sages could not do anything to the Gibdos without Link first setting them on fire. So this battle was all Link. Last are the Moblins. Like the Bokos, the red and blue ones were easy to deal with, but the black Moblins were an issue. The sages really helped us out with this one. Finally, all that was left was Ganondorf. His moveset was the same as the Phantom Ganon's, but I felt his reach was longer, especially his horizontal swing. That felt almost impossible to dodge. As we got Ganondorf's health lower, he started to switch to other weapons. His halberd charge was pretty annoying, but his most dangerous attacks were his Crusher AoE and his bow attack. Ganon's bow attack could actually completely erase our hearts. That's insane. We somehow made it to phase 2 on our first try. But then his health bar grew, and grew, and grew. I was not prepared for this. Not to mention, he created clones of himself. Thankfully the sages appeared, but they were slowly entering the arena. So we still had to dodge the clones while all the sages showed up. The clones thankfully did regular damage and not gloom damage. However, they still made the battle quite hectic. Ganondorf's attacks fell faster than before, making it harder to get hits. Also, I should add that Ganondorf can just deflect arrows with his hand, like he's freaking Radagon from Elden Ring. We had ran out of Sunny food during phase 1, so we lost this attempt. After prepping more food, I retried Ganondorf. Against normal Ganondorf, we went with bomb spam to save on arrows. Since full power Ganondorf was so fast, we needed to use regular arrows. On this attempt, we got lucky, as Ganondorf stayed primarily with his sword, and we got some assistance from Tula and Mineru. This revealed Ganondorf had a stage 2.5. He recalled his clones, but at the same time, he incapacitated all the sages. This also added new moves to his moveset, ones that completely deleted Link's hearts. We don't have enough hearts for this battle. Time to go shrine hunting. I'll be right back. With now a lot more hearts, we face Ganondorf. We started the battle spamming bombs with our Savage Lana bow, doing large chunks of damage. We missed a couple shots, but we got Ganondorf to half health before our Lana bow broke. From there, we switched to a Knight's bow. It was less power, but it had durability up, so it was going to last a while. We continued to spam bombs until we ran out completely. Thankfully, we were staying at a distance that kept Ganon from switching his weapon, until he was out of core health. From there, we were just doing our best to dodge his attacks. We took out phase 1 Ganondorf without using a single sunny food. For phase 2, Ganon immediately brought out his halberd, but we did a good job dodging it as the sages came into the arena. Ganondorf then switched to a sword, which allowed us to keep our distance and attack. We were using a Royal Guards bow in order to get the most damage. Also, Minerva was fighting with us, but she never distracted Ganondorf away from Link. Ganondorf was getting in a lot of hits, but as I said earlier, we never used any food for phase 1. This gave us plenty of longevity as we moved on to phase 2.5. For this phase, when Ganon did moves like his homing magic and halberd combo, we had to just outrun the magic and it would eventually hit the ground. For his magic crusher attack, we had to either get out of range or serpentine through it. These moves allowed very little openings to attack, but we made do. Ganondorf had a lot of health, but so did we. We made some risky plays and some stupid plays, but we did it. We beat Demon King Ganondorf with only archery. Now, the reason the run ends here, while Ganondorf has a third phase, the Demon Dragon will only take damage from the Master Sword. This is not like Breath of the Wild, where you could replace the Cloud Bow by using either the Master Sword or Ancient Arrows. Thank you to everyone who watched this video, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe.